Shabbat Shalom Yasharala. Welcome to week 7 of our Torah Portion series. We will be covering Genesis chapter 20 through 23. Before we begin, let's pray and ask for guidance. Heavenly Abba, high in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day your Shabbat that you have sanctified for daily bread, and continue to feed us as we continue to seek out your word, the bread of life that will give forth life by keeping your commandments, which shows us that we love you. Give us understanding and correction in this season, Heavenly Abba, and all that we do, may it give glory to your kingdom and be a light upon this earth. Bahashem Yasha. Amen and amen. All right. Let me share screen here. All right. Torah portion, Genesis 20 through 23. All right. Starting off Genesis 20, verse 1. Let us begin. I'm going to let the full chapter play here because, this is the entire chapter is just one story, and it's not a long chapter. It's only 20 verses. So I'm going to let the full chapter play, and then we're going to come back and go over it. I know I'm saying this because, I usually chop it up, but for this chapter, I'm just going to let it play. So without further ado, let's begin, family.
Genesis 20. Now Abraham journeyed from there to the region of the Negev, and settled between Kadesh and Shur. While he was staying in Gerar, Abraham said of his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." So Abimelech, king of Gerar, had Sarah brought to him. One night, however, God came to Abimelech in a dream and told him, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken, for she is a married woman." Now Abimelech had not gone near her, so he replied, "Lord, would you destroy a nation even though it is innocent? Didn't Abraham tell me, 'She is my sister'? And she herself said, 'He is my brother.' I have done this in the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands." Then God said to Abimelech in the dream, "Yes, I know that you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet. He will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not restore her, be aware that you will surely die, you and all who belong to you." Early the next morning, Abimelech got up and summoned all his servants, and when he described to them all that had happened, the men were terrified. Then Abimelech called Abraham and asked, "What have you done to us? How have I sinned against you, that you have brought such tremendous guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done things to me that should not be done." Abimelech also asked Abraham, "What prompted you to do such a thing?" Abraham replied, "I thought to myself, surely there is no fear of God in this place. They will kill me on account of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. So when God had me journey from my father's house, I said to Sarah, 'This is how you can show your loyalty to me. Wherever we go, say of me, he is my brother.' So Abimelech brought sheep and cattle, men servants and maid servants, and he gave them to Abraham and restored his wife Sarah to him. And Abimelech said, 'Look, my land is before you. Settle wherever you please.' And he said to Sarah, 'See, I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is your vindication before all who are with you. You are completely cleared.' Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants. so that they could again bear children. For on account of Abraham's wife Sarah, the Lord had completely closed all the wombs in Abimelech's household.
All right. Going all the way back to the top. All right, we're going to now read in the book of Jasher on the same story. Just gives a little bit more information. We're going to read Jasher chapter 20, verses 18 through 23. Chapter 20, verse 18 through 23. And in the morning, Abimelech rose with terror and confusion and with great dread. And he sent and had his servants called in, and he related his dream to them. And the people were greatly afraid. And no man standing amongst the servants of the king answered the king, saying, O sovereign king, restore this woman to her husband, for he is her husband. For the like happened to the king of Egypt when this man came to Egypt. And he said concerning his wife, she is my sister, for such is his manner of doing when he cometh to dwell in the land in which he is a stranger. Very interesting line right there. She is my sister, for such is his manner of doing when he cometh to dwell in a land which he is a stranger. And Pharaoh sent and took this woman for a wife, and the Adon brought upon him grievous plagues until he returned the woman to her husband. Now, therefore, O sovereign king, know what happened yesternight to the whole land, for there was a very great consternation and great pain and lamentation. And we know that it was on account of the woman which thou didst take. Now, therefore, restore this woman to her husband, lest it should befall us as it did Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and his subjects, that we may not die. And Abimelech hastened and called and had Sarah called for, and she came before him, and he had Abraham called for, and he came before him. And we'll stop there. We know where is happening. We already got the conclusion in Genesis 20. And so we see a very similar story that is mentioned right here in the book of Jasher that has gained some fame of the people when Abraham goes into a land that he is a stranger in. This is something that he may do. And he says, because he says that this place surely doesn't fear the Most High. And it is got to be a weird concept, because it is kind of weird. I mean, just being straightforward, right? He says that this is his sister because he don't want y'all to kill her for me. And so it's like he allows the Most High to strike fear into this nation of people that Abraham doesn't believe has fear in the Most High. And so you can say it could be a lack of faith at times of Abraham, thinking that people were going to kill him, or it's just a way for the Most High to drive fear in the nation for himself individually, and also to touching his anointed ones, such as Abraham. And just as the recap, talking about Egypt, this was Genesis 12. We're just going to read 11 through 13. And it came to pass when he was come near to enter into Egypt that he said unto Sarai his wife, behold, now I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray, that thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. So we see some, possibility of Abraham being fearful of a man, but it looks like the Most High has mercy on his anointed and his chosen. And he takes this and he flips it and he strikes fear into the stranger to let them know, don't you ever think about touching Abraham or his wife. Continuing, Genesis 26, we see this foreshadowing of Isaac doing the same thing, even to the same people in Gerar, the Philistines. In Genesis 26, 6 and 7, Isaac dwelt in Gerar, the same place Abraham is right now. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, she is my sister, for he feared to say, she is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. Same exact idea that we're reading about Abraham. This story is echoed in scripture, and it's just got to be for the simple reason of protecting his people. And Shekinah says connections of the plagues that was put upon Egypt for not releasing his people, which is his bride. And it's just an echo of protecting his people, regardless of the conditions, right? And let's see. Oh, oops. And then that leads us to Psalms 105 right here. I'm going to read 9 through 15. Which covenant he made with Abraham and his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Yasharallah for everlasting covenant, saying unto thee, I will give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance. When they were but a few men in number, yea, very few, and strangers in it. Just as Abraham says, he walks in a land. This is what he does when he walks in a land of strangers that don't fear the Most High. When they went from one nation to another, from one kingdom to another people, he suffered no man to do them wrong. Yea, he reproved kings for their sakes, saying, touch not my anointed, and do my prophets no harm. Man, I think Psalm 105, 9 through 15 summarizes these stories of Abraham and then Isaac and then Yasharallah going into the stranger's land. I mean, heck, even today, if you are his chosen and you're doing his will, you will be protected. And that summarizes Genesis 20 in a nutshell. Like I said, one full story that is echoed in the book. And that is chapter 20. Continuing with the birth of Isaac in chapter 21.
Genesis 21. Now the Lord attended to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised. And Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore to him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Then Sarah said, God has made me laugh, and everyone who hears of this will laugh with me. She added, who would have told Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. So the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham held a great feast on the day Isaac was weaned.
We spoke about this last week, Torah portion, but everything from verse 6 to 7 is the sign that this is from Abba. This Sarah said, Elohim, Elohim has made me laugh, and everyone who hears this will laugh with me. The laugh is that it was unbelievable that what she adds. Who would have told Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. That is the sign. That is now it's a laughter of joy, of just Abba just does the things that are impossible, that we don't think is possible at times. That's the whole laugh. It's a good laugh at this point with Sarah, right? And now let's go to the book of Jasher, chapter 21. We're going to read verse 4 through 8. And the child grew up, and he was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast upon the day that Isaac was weaned. And Shem and Eber and all the great people of the land, and Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and his servants, and Phicol, the captain of his hosts, came to eat and drink and rejoice at the feast which Abraham made upon the day of his son's Isaac's being weaned. Also Terah, the father of Abraham, and Nahor, his brother, came from Haran, they and all belonging to them, for they greatly rejoiced on hearing that a son had been born to Sarah. And they came to Abraham, and they ate and drank at the feast which Abraham made upon the day of Isaac's being weaned. And Terah and Nahor rejoiced with Abraham, and they remained with him many days in the land of the Philistines. And we'll stop right there for now. And I wanted to expound on this feast because this was the biggest feast that you could have. You have the king of the land at your feast with his captain of the host. You have Shem, Eber. You have your dad, your brother, all coming out of town. This feast had to be something special. And I just also wanted to highlight that we search for things to celebrate in this life and to have fun. And the moment we wake up, we hear that everything's pagan, everything, these holidays. And then we go, oh, we got the feast days, bet. And then you have birthdays. Birthdays are just full of idolatry of your own self, really. And just throwing this out there, when your child is weaned from milk, from breastfeeding, this is a milestone in the life of a youth. And at least for this moment, it was a big deal and something to praise Abba that you have a child growing in health. And just thought it was a cool little detail that's in the book of Jasher here. All right, going back to Genesis 21. Let's continue reading, starting with verse 9.
But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking her son. And she said to Abraham, "Expel the slave woman and her son, for the slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Now this matter distressed Abraham greatly, because it concerned his son Ishmael. But God said to Abraham, "Do not be distressed about the boy and your maidservant. Listen to everything that Sarah tells you, for through Isaac your offspring will be reckoned. But I will also make a nation of the slave woman's son, because he is your offspring."
All right. And I want to say this. Sarah turns against Hagar. It's not a fair assumption, okay? We're going to read in the book of Jasher what happens to make Sarah says that Hagar and the boy needs to leave. There needs to be a separation. It honestly is pretty valid once we read the details here. So I don't believe, once we read it, you'll see why I don't believe Sarah just outright turns against Hagar. There's actual reasoning behind this. So we're going to go to Jasher chapter 21. We're going to read 11 through 15. And Ishmael, the son of Abraham, was grown up in those days. He was 14 years old when Sarah bare Isaac to Abraham. And the Most High was with Ishmael, the son of Abraham, and he grew up and he learned to use the bow and became an archer. And when Isaac was 5 years old, he was sitting with Ishmael at the door of the tent. So what, 5 plus 14? Like they said, Ishmael's 19 years old. He's a man, right? A young man. And Isaac is a little boy, 5. And Ishmael came to Isaac and seated himself opposite to him. And he took the bow and drew it and put the arrow in it and intended to slay Isaac. This isn't some child. This is a 19-year-old young man putting an arrow. That's like pointing a gun with a bullet in it at a child nowadays, right? What would you do, right? You'd be like, hey, this boy needs to go. And at that time, it was, him with his mother. So, I mean, this is a pretty big deal, right? Continuing, verse 15. And Sarah saw the act which Ishmael desired to do to her son Isaac, and it grieved her exceedingly on account of her son. And she sent for Abraham and said to him, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for her son shall not be heir with my son, for thus did he seek to do unto him this day. It's pretty significant, if you ask me. And we're going to go to Galatians 4. Paul has an interesting perspective on Hagar and Sarah in the spiritual sense. So we're going to read Galatians 4, 21 through 24, then 28 through 30. Tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do ye not hear the law? For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, Ishmael, obviously. But he of the free woman was born by promise, Isaac. Which things are an allegory? For these are the 2 covenants, the one from the Mount Sinai, which genereth to bondage, which is Hagar. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise. But as then he that was born after the flesh prosecuted him that was born after the spirit. So we're seeing the story unfold. But as then he, Ishmael, that was born after the flesh, prosecuted him that was born after the spirit. So the story that we're reading about of Ishmael pointing an arrow to kill Isaac, this is what I believe Paul is referring to in verse 29. Even so it is now. Nevertheless, what saith the scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So, interesting point of view and understanding spiritually of the story of Abraham. All right, continuing now at verse 14.
Early in the morning, Abraham got up, took bread and a skin of water, put them on Hagar's shoulders, and sent her away with the boy. She left and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she left the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down nearby, about a bow shot away. For she said, I cannot bear to watch the boy die. And as she sat nearby, she lifted up her voice and wept. Then God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven, What is wrong, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he lies. Get up, lift up the boy, and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up and settled in the wilderness and became a great archer. And while he was dwelling in the wilderness of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt.
All right, let's stop there. We're going to have a little lengthy reading in Jasher 21. I want to give y'all this gift of a good story between Abraham and Ishmael. That Abraham still loved Ishmael, and he seeked his firstborn son Ishmael after some time now. So we're going to read Jasher 21:16. So this is going to connect the dots, leading us to the next chapter of Isaac's sacrifice. That's another reason I want to read this, because it kind of like just gives a more in-depth understanding of the relationship Abraham had with Ishmael, and it connects next chapter's witnesses. All right, so we're going to read verse 16 through 48 in Jasher 21. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Sarah, and he rose up early in the morning and took 12 loaves and a bottle of water, which he gave to Hagar, and sent her away with her son. And Hagar went with her son to the wilderness, and they dwelt in the wilderness of Paran with the inhabitants of the wilderness. And Ishmael was an archer, and he dwelt in the wilderness a long time. And he and his mother afterwards went to the land of Egypt, and they dwelt there. And Hagar took a wife for her son from Egypt, and her name was Meribah. And the wife of Ishmael conceived and bare 4 sons and 2 daughters. And Ishmael and his mother and his wife and children afterward went and returned to the wilderness. And they made themselves tents in the wilderness, in which they dwelt. And they continued to travel and then rest monthly and yearly. And Elohim gave Ishmael flocks and herds and tents on account of Abraham his father, and the man increased in cattle. And Ishmael dwelt in deserts and in tents, traveling and resting for a long time, and he did not see the face of his father. And in some time after, Abraham said to Sarah, his wife, I will go and see my son Ishmael, for I have a desire to see him, for I have not seen him for a long time. And Abraham rode upon one of his camels to the wilderness to seek his son Ishmael, for he heard that he was dwelling in a tent in the wilderness with all belonging to him. And Abraham went to the wilderness, and he reached the tent of Ishmael about noon. And he asked after Ishmael, and he found the wife of Ishmael sitting in the tent with her children. And Ishmael, her husband, and his mother were not with them. And Abraham asked the wife of Ishmael, saying, where has Ishmael gone? And she said, he has gone to the field to hunt. And Abraham was still mounted upon the camel, for he would not get off the ground to the ground, as he had shown to his wife Sarah that he would not get off from the camel. And Abraham said to Ishmael's wife, my daughter, give me a little water that I may drink, for I am fatigued from the journey. And Ishmael's wife answered and said to Abraham, we have neither water nor bread. And she continued sitting in the tent and did not notice Abraham. Neither did she ask him who he was. But she was beating her children in the tent, and she was cursing them. And she also cursed her husband Ishmael and reproached him. And Abraham heard the words of Ishmael's wife to her children, and he was very angry and displeased. And Abraham called to the woman to come out to him from the tent. And the woman came and stood opposite to Abraham, for Abraham was still mounted upon the camel. And Abraham said to Ishmael's wife, when thy husband Ishmael returns home, say these words to him. A very old man from the land of the Philistines came hither to seek thee, and thus was his appearance and figure. I did not ask him who he was, and seeing thou was not here, he spoke unto me and said, when Ishmael thy husband returns, tell him, thus did this man say, when thou comest home, put away this nail of the tent which thou hast placed, and place another nail in its stead. Verse 32. And Abraham finished his instructions to the woman, and he turned and went off on the camel homeward. And after that, Ishmael came from the chase, he and his mother, and returned to the tent, and his wife spoke these words to him. A very old man from the land of the Philistines came to seek thee, and thus was his appearance and figure. I did not ask him who he was, and seeing thou was not at home, he said to me, when thy husband cometh home, tell him, thus says the old man, put away the nail of the tent which thou hast placed here, and place another nail in its stead. And Ishmael heard the words of his wife, and he knew that it was his father, and that his wife did not honor him. And Ishmael understood his father's words that he had spoken to his wife, and Ishmael hearkened to the voice of his husband. And Ishmael cast off the woman, and she went away. And Ishmael afterwards went to the land of Canaan, and he took another wife, and he brought her to his tent, to the place where he then dwelt. And at the end of 3 years, Abraham said, I will go again and see Ishmael my son, for I have not seen him for a long time. And he rode upon his camel and went to the wilderness, and he reached the tent of Ishmael about noon. And he asked after Ishmael, and his wife came out of the tent and said, he is not here, my lord, for he has gone to hunt in the fields and to feed the camels. And the woman said to Abraham, turn in, my lord, into the tent and eat a morsel of bread, for thy soul must be wearied on account of the journey. And Abraham said to her, I will not stop, for I am in haste to continue my journey. But give me a little water to drink, for I have thirst. And the woman hastened and ran into the tent, and she brought out water and bread to Abraham, which she placed before him, and she urged him to eat. And he ate and drank, and his heart was comforted, and he blessed his son Ishmael. And he finished his meal, and he blessed the Adon. And he said to Ishmael's wife, when Ishmael cometh home, say these words to him. A very old man from the land of the Philistines came hither and asked after thee, and thou was not here. And I brought him out bread and water, and he ate and drank, and his heart was comforted. And he spoke these words to me. When Ishmael thy husband cometh home, say unto him, the nail of the tent which thou hast is very good, and do not put it away from the tent. Much different. Very opposite, actually. Verse 45, and Abraham finished commanding the woman, and he rode off to his home to the land of the Philistines. And when Ishmael came to his tent, his wife went forth to meet him with joy and a cheerful heart. And she said to him, an old man came here from the land of the Philistines, and thus was his appearance. And he asked after thee, and thou was not here. So I brought out bread and water, and he ate and drank, and his heart was comforted. And he spoke these words to me. When Ishmael thy husband cometh home, say to him, the nail of the tent which thou hast is very good. Do not put it away from the tent. And Ishmael knew that it was his father, and his wife had honored him, and the Adon blessed Ishmael. Just the deep story of Abraham, and just shedding a different perspective light on Abraham and Ishmael, because obviously there's not much written about their relationship. Even though they didn't have a lot of interaction with each other, it just shows that there was always there's still a father connection bond with Ishmael and Abraham. All right. Continuing now in chapters 21 of Genesis with verse 22.
At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore, swear to me here before God, that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or descendants. Show to me and to the country in which you reside the same kindness that I have shown to you. And Abraham replied, I swear it. But when Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well that Abimelech's servants had seized, Abimelech replied, I do not know who has done this. You did not tell me, so I have not heard about it until today. So Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham separated 7 ewe lambs from the flock, and Abimelech asked him, Why have you set apart these 7 ewe lambs? He replied, You are to accept the 7 ewe lambs from my hand as my witness that I dug this well. So that place was called Beersheba, because it was there that the two of them swore an oath. After they had made the covenant at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, got up and returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called upon the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham resided in the land of the Philistines for a long time.
So let's look at this tree. Just I looked it up, like what does this tree look like? What's this tamarisk tree? And that's what Google gave me, guys. And the idea of this tree, from what I read, that this tree grows very slowly. The idea behind it in the spiritual aspect meaning was that this tree is a slow growing tree that lasts a long time. That's what's supposed to represent that this tree was made for the generations to come, that this was Abraham's well and it was for his seed to come in a sense, right? Now let's go to Jasher chapter 22 to read this same story with a slightly different perspective. We're going to read verses 1 through 15 here. And Ishmael then rose up and took his wife and his children and his cattle and all belonging to him, and he journeyed from there and went to his father in the land of the Philistines. So this, remember I said I'm reading all of this last chapter in Jasher, because all of that happened. Ishmael ends up having, 2 separate wives, years pass, and all of this happened, but Ishmael returns back to his father's home in the Philistines. And we're going to see that Ishmael is present during the time where Isaac is sacrificed. He's with Abraham. We're going to see that. And this is how he got there. He returns back. So I'm just showing you how all the dots connect. Like, where did Ishmael come from? The book of Jasher shows you where he came from. He comes back after that second time. All right. Now, verse 2. And Abraham related to Ishmael, his son, the transaction with the first wife that Ishmael took, according to what she did. And Ishmael and his children dwelt with Abraham many days in that land, and Abraham dwelt in the land of the Philistines a long time. And the days increased and reached 26 years. A lot of time has passed. And after that, Abraham, with his servants and all belonging to him, went from the land of the Philistines and removed to a great distance, and they came near to Hebron and remained there. And the servants of Abraham dug wells of water, and Abraham and all belonging to him dwelt by the water. And the servants of Abimelech, king of the Philistines, heard the report that Abraham's servants had dug wells of water in the borders of the land. And they came and quarreled with the servants of Abraham, and they robbed them of the great well which they had dug. And Abraham, king of the Philistines, heard of this affair, and he with Phicol, the captain of his host, and 20 of his men came to Abraham. And Abimelech spoke to Abraham concerning his servants. And Abraham rebuked Abimelech concerning the well of which his servants had robbed him. Verse 7. And Abimelech said to Abraham, as the Adon liveth, who created the whole earth, I did not hear of the act which my servants did unto thy servants until this day. And Abraham took 7 ewe lambs and gave them to Abimelech, saying, take these, I pray thee, from my hands, that it may be a testimony for me that I dug this well. And Abimelech took the 7 ewe lambs which Abraham had given to him, for he had also given him cattle and herds in abundance. And Abimelech swore to Abraham concerning the well. Therefore he called that well Beersheba, for there they both swore concerning it. And they both made a covenant in Beersheba. And Abimelech rose up with Phicol, the captain of his host, and all his men, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham and all belonging to him dwelt in Beersheba, and he was in that land a long time. And Abraham planted a large grove in Beersheba, and he made to it 4 gates facing the 4 sides of the earth. And he planted a vineyard in it, so that if a traveler came to Abraham, he entered any gate which was in his road, and remained there, and ate and drank, and satisfied himself, and then departed. For the house of Abraham was always open to the sons of men that passed and repassed, who came daily to eat and drink in the house of Abraham. And any man who had hunger and came to Abraham's house, Abraham would give him bread that he might eat and drink and be satisfied. And anyone that came naked to his house, he would clothe with garments as he might choose, and give him silver and gold, and make known to him the Adon who had created him in the earth. This did Abraham all his life. And Abraham and his children and all belonging to him dwelt in Beersheba, and he pitched his tent as far as Hebron. And Abraham's brother Nahor and his father and all belonging to them dwelt in Haran, for they did not come with Abraham to the land of Canaan. It's Abraham. What a righteous setup. You have this land that you've got a well dug. You have trees, garden, I'm sure, and a full gate on every side for travelers to come in and to greet and talk about the Most High. I mean, could you ask for any more? Such a beautiful image for Abraham in his life. Okay, let's see here now. And that is the conclusion of chapter 21. All right. Chapter 22, verse 1.
Genesis 22. Sometime later, God tested him and said to him, Abraham. Here I am, he answered. Take your son, God said, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will show you.
All right. Quick stop here. So let's go now into, because there's a whole scene that is set up in the book of Jasher right before verse 1 and 2 of Genesis 22. So let's go to Jasher chapter 22, and we're going to be reading verse 40 through 55. All right, let us read. If you have questions that are not directly connected to what we're reading at the moment, I can answer that after the Torah portion is over at the end of the live. Okay. All right. So once again, I'm reading Jasher 22, 40 through 55. And Isaac, the son of Abraham, was growing up in those days. And Abraham, his father, taught him the way of the Adon to know the Most High. And the Most High was with him. And when Isaac was 37 years old, Ishmael, his brother, was going about with him in the tent. So that's another highlight right there in verse 41. Isaac is 37 years old at the time of his sacrifice. Okay. I know in some translations or versions, they make it seem like he's just a little boy. Or just the images created online, they make it seem like he's a small teenager of sorts. 37 years old. Isaac was a grown man. Very important detail, because this was just as much on Isaac as it was on Abraham. You don't think Isaac could have fought his father and said, no, I'm not doing this, right? He's 37. He would have put up a good fight. But continuing. So Isaac was 37 years old, verse 41, and Ishmael, his brother, was going about with him in the tent. And so this also, like I said, connects the dots to how Ishmael got here, because we read how he came back, right? Verse 42, and Ishmael boasted of himself to Isaac, just like brothers would do, right? Saying, I was 13 years old when the Adon spoke to my father to circumcise us, and I did according to the word of the Adon, which he spoke to my father. And I gave my soul unto the Adon, and I did not transgress his word, which he commanded my father. And Isaac answered Ishmael, saying, why dost thou boast to me about this, about a little bit of thy flesh, which thou didst take from thy body, concerning which the Adon commanded thee? As the Adon liveth, the Elohim of my father Abraham, if the Adon should say unto my father, take now thy son Isaac and bring him up an offering before me, I would not refrain, but I would joyfully accede to it. Verse 41 right there, according to the book of Jasher, chapter 22, verse 44, Isaac came up with the idea for him to be a sacrifice right here. Continuing now, verse 45. The Adon heard the word that Isaac spoke to Ishmael, and it seemed good in the sight of the Adon. And he thought to try Abraham in this matter. And the day arrived when the sons of God came and placed themselves before the Adon, and Satan also came with the sons of God before the Adon. And the Adon said unto Satan, which cometh thou? And Satan answered the Adon and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Adon said to Satan, what is thy word to me concerning all the children of the earth? And Satan answered the Adon and said, I have seen the children of the earth who serve thee and remember thee when they acquire anything from thee. And when thou givest them the thing which they require from thee, they sit at their ease and forsake thee, and they remember thee no more. Hast thou seen Abraham, the son of Terah, who at first had no children, and he served thee and erected altars to thee wherever he came, and he brought up offerings upon them, and he proclaimed thy name continually to all the children of the earth. And now that his son Isaac is born to him, he has forsaken thee. He has made a great feast for all the inhabitants of the land, and the Adon he has forsaken. Verse 52, for amidst all that he has done, he brought thee no offering, neither burnt offering nor peace offering, neither ox, lamb, nor goat of all that he killed on the day that his son was weaned, even from the time of his son's birth till now, being 37 years old. He built no altar before thee, nor brought any offering to thee, for he saw that thou didst give what he requested before thee, and he therefore forsook thee. And the Adon said to Satan, hast thou thus considered my servant Abraham? For there is none like him upon earth, a perfect and upright man before me, one that feareth Elohim and avoideth evil. As I live, were I to say unto him, bring up Isaac thy son before me, he would not withhold him from me. Much more if I told him to bring up a burnt offering before me from his flock or herds. And Satan answered the Adon and said, speak then now unto Abraham as thou hast said, and thou wilt see whether he will not this day transgress and cast aside thy words. Wow. So this reminds the perspective of Satan prompting the Most High to judge people in these matters. Reminds me of the book of Job, of course. Let me see, for verse 46, I believe. Yes, 46 and 47. We'll read it one more time here. And the day arrived when the sons of God came and placed themselves before the Adon, and Satan also came with the sons of God before the Adon. And the Adon said unto Satan, whence thou comest? And Satan answered the Adon, saying, from going to and fro on the earth, from walking up and down on it. Just to show the connections from the book of Jasher to the canon, we're going to read the very similar perspective in Job 1, 6-8. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Adon, and Satan also came also among them. And the Adon said unto Satan, whence thou comest thou? And then Satan answered the Adon and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And then he talks about Job instead of Abraham, obviously, in the book of Job. But very cool parallels with Job in Jasher 22 here. And then now back to Jasher to 40, verse 44 here, when Isaac says that if take now thy son Isaac and bring him, I would not refrain, but I would joyfully accede to it. You know, if you're going to say something, you better be about it. You better be about it. Scripture warns us that there shall be no idle word that comes out of our mouth. As Mashiach says in Matthew 12, 36 and 37, but I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by the words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Also, Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. Do not speak if things are untrue, if you're being unrighteous. What are you saying? You mean what you say. Let your yeses mean yes, your no's mean no. Do not curse people. as Ishmael's first Egyptian wife was cursing her children. This is why, you know, we have to grow from even the terminology that we learned in Babylon and whatnot, and be careful what comes out of our mouths. Just a simple thing like, I've spoken this about this before, calling people human, calling yourself human. That's a psyop. You're cursing yourself and belittling yourself to a monkey. That word is connected to Homo sapiens. That's and that word literally means you come from a monkey. Same things with I mean, quite a few things. Not going to go over all these terminologies here, but this is why we should grow. When we grow in understanding, we should grow in how we speak, how we carry ourselves, etc. That's what this life's about. See, in our generation. All right. Continuing now. So that's the whole setup to start off this chapter with the offering of Isaac, that Isaac actually came up with the idea himself. So he couldn't have been surprised when he was prompted to complete the task. Verse 3 in chapter 22 of Genesis now.
So Abraham got up early the next morning, saddled his donkey, and took along 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. He split the wood for a burnt offering and set out for the place God had designated. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. "Stay here with the donkey," Abraham told his servants. "The boy and I will go over there to worship, and then we will return to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. He himself carried the fire and the sacrificial knife, and the 2 of them walked on together. Then Isaac said to his father Abraham, "My father." "Here I am, my son," he replied. "The fire and the wood are here," said Isaac, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 walked on together.
All right. We're gonna read quite a bit of Jasher 23 for Genesis 22 right now. There's so much good details in between these lines in the book of Genesis here. And this story always gets me emotional, man. Because this story summarizes what this life's about. You're willing to die on this hill that we call faith. That's what this life's about. The true test. We are tested on things that we are fearful of doing. We understand how much Isaac wanted, how much Abraham wanted a son, especially through his wife, Sarah. Isaac, for Abraham and Sarah, has to be their most prized possession, bar none. And he's asking Abraham to give it up. If you're not willing to give up something that you're fearful of losing, then you will fail. You will fail this test at one point. This is what we just read, what Satan's here to do. He's here to expose you, to show the Most High that you love something more than him. I'm going to say that again. From the book of Job to the book of Jasher with Abraham here, Satan is here to expose you, to show the Most High that you love something or someone more than him. Better watch what you fear. You will be tested. And so we're going to go to the book of Jasher now. Chapter 23, verse 20 through 57. And Abraham went with Isaac his son to bring him up as an offering before the Adon, as he had commanded him. And Abraham took two of his young men with him, Ishmael, the son of Hagar, and Eleazar, his servant. So it tells us who those two men are that are on the journey with him. And they went together with them. And while if they were walking in the road, the young men spoke these words to themselves. And Ishmael said to Eleazar, now my father Abraham is going with Isaac to bring him up for a burnt offering to the Adon as he commanded him. Now when he returneth, he will give unto me all that he possesses to inherit after him, for I am his firstborn. And Eleazar answered Ishmael and said, surely Abraham did cast thee away with thy mother, the trash talking, and swear that thou shouldst not inherit anything of all he possesses. And to whom will he give all that he has, with all his treasures, but unto me his servant, who has been faithful in his house, and who has served him day and night, or night and day, and and has done all that he desired me. To me will he bequeath at his death all that he possesses. And while Abraham was proceeding with his son Isaac along the road, Satan came and appeared to Abraham in the figure of a very aged man, humble and contrite spirit. And he approached Abraham and said to him, art thou silly and brutish, that thou goest to do this thing this day to thy only son? For Elohim gave thee a son in thy latter days and in thy old age. And wilt thou go and slaughter him this day because he committed no violence? And wilt thou cause the soul of thy only son to perish from the earth? Dost thou not know and understand that this thing cannot be from the Adon? For the Adon cannot do unto man such evil upon earth to say to him, go slaughter thy child. And Abraham heard this and knew that it was the word of Satan, who endeavored to draw him aside from the way of the Adon. But Abraham would not hearken to the voice of Satan, and Abraham rebuked him so that he went away. And Satan returned and came to Isaac, and he appeared unto Isaac in the figure of a young man, calmly and well favored. And he approached Isaac and said unto him, dost thou not know and understand that thy old silly father bringeth thee to the slaughter this day for naught? Now therefore, my son, do not listen nor attend to him, for he is a silly old man. And let not thy precious soul and beautiful figure be lost from the earth. And Isaac heard this and said unto his father, hast thou heard, my father, that which this man has spoken? Even thus has he spoken. And Abraham answered his son Isaac and said to him, take heed of him and do not listen to his words, nor attend to him, for he is Satan, endeavoring to draw us aside this day from the commandments of Elohim. Verse 34. And Abraham still rebuked Satan, and Satan went from them. And seeing he could not prevail over them, he hid himself from them. And he went and passed before them in the road, and transformed himself into a large brook of water in the road. And Abraham and Isaac and his two young men reached that place, and they saw a brook large and powerful as mighty waters. And they entered the brook and passed through it, and the waters at first reached their legs. And they went deeper into the brook, and the waters reached up to their necks. And they were all terrified on the account of the water. And while they were going over the brook, Abraham recognized that place. And he knew that there was no water there before. And Abraham said to his son Isaac, I know this place in which there was no brook nor water. Now, therefore, it is this Satan who does all this to us to draw us aside this day from the commandments of Elohim. And Abraham rebuked him and said unto him, The Adon rebuke thee, O Satan, be gone from us, for we go by the commands of Elohim. And I'm just going to take a quick stop there. I want you to see just how straightforward this is. I know we hear a lot of stuff from churchianity on rebuking spirits, casting out demons. Let's take a page out of the book of just Abraham. Abraham rebuked him being Satan, and said to him, what did he say? Very clear, precise command. The Adon, the Most High, Higher, rebuke thee, O Satan. Be gone from us, for we go by the commands of the Most High. That's all you got to do, family. You don't have to be a poet. You don't have to speak gibberish. You don't have to do all this crazy things. You stand firm in faith, in fear of only the Most High, in keeping his commandments. And you tell him to move to the side. We just got done talking about the power of the tongue. If you are truly a child of the Most High, you don't think the Most High has given you power in the tongue over these demons we call Satan? Verse 39. And Satan was terrified at the voice of Abraham. Look at that. And he went away from them, and the place again became dry land as it was at first. This was all spiritual, family. And Abraham went with Isaac towards the place that Elohim had told him. And on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place at a distance which Elohim had told of him. And a pillar of fire appeared to him that reached from the earth to heaven, and a cloud of glory upon the mountain, and the glory of the Adon was seen in the cloud. And Abraham said to Isaac, my son, dost thou see in that mountain which we perceive at a distance, that which I see upon it? And Isaac answered and said unto his father, I see, and lo, a pillar of fire and a cloud. And we know that this is reminiscent with the wilderness in the Exodus, right? From Egypt, right? A pillar of fire by night, a pillar of cloud by day, right? The glory of the Adon is seen upon the cloud. So, see that connection? Verse 45, and Abraham knew that his son Isaac was accepted before the Adon for a burnt offering. This is us, family. We are all to be molted, to be shaped as gold, refined as gold in fire. But at the same time, in that fire, we are to be purifying ourselves, to be a living sacrifice, to be worthy and accepted to be a sacrifice. And Abraham said unto Eleazar and unto Ishmael his son, do you also see that which we see upon the mountain, which is at a distance? And they answered and said, we see nothing more than like the other mountains of the earth. And Abraham knew that they were not accepted before the Adon to go with them. And Abraham said to them, abide ye here with the ass, while if I and Isaac, my son, will go to yonder mount and worship there before the Adon, and then return to you. And Eleazar and Ishmael remained in that place as Abraham had commanded. And Abraham took wood for a burnt offering and placed it upon his son Isaac. And he took the fire and the knife, and they both went to that place. And when they were going along, Isaac said to his father, behold, I see here the fire and wood, and where then is the lamb that is to be burnt, the burnt offering before the Adon? And Abraham answered his son Isaac, saying, the Adon has made choice of thee, my son, to be a perfect burnt offering instead of the lamb. And Isaac said unto his father, I will do all that the Adon spoke to thee with joy and cheerfulness of heart. And Abraham again said unto Isaac his son, Is there in thy heart any thought or counsel concerning this which is not proper? Tell me, my son, I pray thee. O my son, conceal it not from me. And Isaac answered his father Abraham and said unto him, O my father, as the Adon liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is nothing in my heart to cause me to deviate either to the right or to the left from the word that has been spoken to thee. Neither limb nor muscle has moved or stirred at this, nor is there in my heart any thought or evil counsel concerning this. But I am of joyful and cheerful heart in this matter, and blessed is the Adon who has this day chosen me to be a burnt offering before him. And Abraham greatly rejoiced at the words of Isaac, and they went on and came together to that place that the Adon has spoken of. Man, Isaac had to back up his words that he said to his brother earlier, but just powerful story and dedication to this walk of faith, walking in faith and truth. Man. Woo. All right, so we stopped at verse 8 now. Let's continue with verse 9 of chapter 22 of Genesis.
When they arrived at the place God had designated, Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood. He bound his son Isaac and placed him on the altar atop the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. Just then the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy or do anything to him, said the angel. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your only son from me. Then Abraham looked up and saw behind him a ram in a thicket, caught by its horns. So he went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. And Abraham called that place, The Lord will provide. So to this day it is said, On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time, saying, By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, that because you have done this, and have not withheld your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will multiply your descendants like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will possess the gates of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations of the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. Abraham went back to his servants, and they got up and set out together for Beersheba. And Abraham settled in Beersheba.
All right, so back to the book of Jasher. Chapter 23, we're going to be reading 58 through 75 now. And Abraham approached to build the altar in that place. And Abraham was weeping, and Isaac took stones and mortar until they had finished building the altar. And Abraham took the wood and placed it in order upon the altar which he had built. And he took his son Isaac and bound him in order to place him upon the wood which was upon the altar to slay him for a burnt offering before the Adon. And Isaac said to his father, Bind me securely, and then place me upon the altar, lest I should turn and move, and break loose from the force of the knife upon my flesh. And therefore and thereof profane the burnt offering. And Abraham did so. And Isaac still said to his father, O my father, when thou shalt have slain me and burnt me for an offering, take with thee that which shall remain of my ashes to bring to Sarah my mother, and say to her, This is the sweet smelling savor of Isaac. But do not tell her this if she should sit near a well or upon any high place, lest she should cast her soul after me and die. Little foreshadowing there, we'll see. And Abraham heard the words of Isaac, and he lifted up his voice and wept when Isaac spoke these words. And Abraham's tears gushed down upon Isaac his son, and Isaac wept bitterly. And he said to his father, Hasten thou, O my father, and do with me the will of the Adon our Elohim, as he had commanded thee. And the hearts of Abraham and Isaac rejoiced at this thing which the Adon had commanded them. But the eye wept bitterly, while the heart rejoiced. And Abraham bound his son Isaac and placed him on the altar upon the wood. And Isaac stretched forth his neck upon the altar before his father. And Abraham stretched forth his hand to take the knife to slay his son as a burnt offering before the Adon. At that time, the angels of mercy came before the Adon and spoke to him concerning Isaac, saying, O Adon, thou art a merciful and compassionate king over all that thou hast created in heaven and in earth, and thou supportest them all. Give therefore ransom and redemption instead of thy servant Isaac, in pity, and have compassion upon Abraham and Isaac his son, who are this day performing thy commands. And I don't have the verse with me right here, but verse 67, they're petitioning. The angels are petitioning for man. The angels are petitioning. This is exactly what is spoken of in the book of Enoch. That angels are here to petition for man, not man for angels, which the fallen angels are asking Enoch to petition for them, which is what that story is about. So that was just an interesting thing with that. Verse 68, hast thou seen, O Adon, how Isaac the son of Abraham, thy servant, is bound down to the slaughter like an animal? Now therefore let thy pity be roused for them, O Adon. At that time the Adon appeared unto Abraham and said to him from heaven, and said unto him, Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest Elohim in performing this act. And that's why I said this is what all this is about, is who do you fear? Do you fear something more than the Most High? You will be exposed. In not withholding thy son, thy only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, a ram was caught in the thicket by his horns. That was the ram which the Adon Elohim had created in the earth in the day that he made earth and heaven. For the Adon had prepared this ram from that day to be a burnt offering instead of Isaac. And this ram was advancing to Abraham when Satan caught hold of him, entangled his horns in the thicket. These thickets, thorns and thickets, represent sin, that he might not advance to Abraham, in order that Abraham might slay his son. And Abraham, seeing the ram advancing to him, and Satan withholding him, fetched him and brought him before the altar, and he loosened his son Isaac from his binding, and he put the ram in his stead. And Abraham killed the ram upon the altar and brought it up as an offering in the place of his son Isaac. And Abraham sprinkled some of the blood of the ram upon the altar, which we see the Levites do in the book of Leviticus and throughout the book. And he exclaimed and said, "This is in the place of my son, and may this be considered this day as the blood of my son before the Adon." And all that Abraham did on this occasion by the altar, he would exclaim and say, "This is in the room of my son, and may it this day be considered before the Adon in the place of my son." And Abraham finished the whole of the service by the altar, and the service was accepted before the Most High and was accounted as if it had been Isaac, foreshadowing for Mashiach and the Lamb, right? And the Adon blessed Abraham and his seed on that day. And then also see a good note here by Shekinah, the revealing of the smoke, pillar of smoke and fire on the mountain with Abraham and Isaac is the word, literally the word. The pillar of smoke represents the word, Mashiach. The glory of the Most High is being revealed to his bride, his people, obviously in due season. Very, very beautiful perspective there, Shekinah. And now we're just going to finish off the story with a little genealogy of the sons of Nahor at verse 20 here.
Sometime later, Abraham was told, "Milcah has also borne sons to your brother Nahor. Uz, the firstborn, his brother Buz, Kemuel, the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. Milcah bore these 8 sons to Abraham's brother Nahor. Moreover, Nahor's concubine, whose name was Rumah, bore Teba, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah."
All right, we see this setting up Rebekah. This was, I would say, the bulk of the reason for this quick genealogy of Nahor was to show you where we get Rebekah. Okay. So Milcah and Nahor had a child, and that child is the father of Rebekah. Okay. Which leads us to chapter 23.
Genesis 23. Now Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died in Kiriath Arba, that is, Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went out to mourn and to weep for her.
All right, let's stop right there and let's go see what happened to Sarah, because it doesn't give you much at all in the canon. But the book of Jasher fills in these blanks for us. So out of nowhere, we're talking about Sarah's death at the beginning of chapter 23 here. So let's see what happens here. So we're going to read Jasher 23, 76 through 90. And Satan went to Sarah, and he appeared to her in the figure of an old man, very humble and meek. And Abraham was yet engaged in the burnt offering before the Adon. And he said unto her, "Dost thou not know all the work that Abraham has made with thy only son this day? For he took Isaac and built an altar and killed him and brought him up as a sacrifice upon the altar. And Isaac cried and wept before his father, but he looked at him, neither did he have compassion over him." And Satan repeated these words, and he went away from her. And Sarah heard all the words of Satan, and she imagined him to be an old man from amongst the sons of men who had been with her son, and had come and told her these things. And Sarah lifted up her voice and wept and cried out bitterly on account of her son. And she threw herself upon the ground, and she cast dust upon her head. And she said, "O my son, Isaac my son, oh, that I had this day died instead of thee." And she continued to weep. let me just stop there. Oh, that I had this day died instead of thee. Very interesting statement, because Isaac didn't die. So, and she continued to weep and said, it grieves me for thee, my son Isaac. Oh, that I had died this day in thy stead. And she still continued to weep and said, it grieves me for thee after that I have reared thee and have brought thee up. Now my joy is turned into mourning over thee. I that had a longer longing for thee and prayed to Elohim till I bare thee at 90 years old. And now hast thou served this day for the knife and the fire to be made an offering. But I console myself with thee, my son, in its being the word of the Adon, for thou didst perform the command of thy Elohim. For who can transgress the word of our Elohim, in whose hands is the soul of every living creature? So at the very minimum, at least Sarah says, well, if this was performing the commandments, then who can go against the commandments? I'm glad verse 81 is stated, because outside of that one, she flips out. I mean, I know her son passes, but that's the point. She thinks it. She doesn't know it. Thou art just, O Adon, our Elohim, for all thy works are good and righteous. For I also am rejoiced with thy word which thou didst command. And while my eyes weepeth bitterly, my heart rejoiceth. And Sarah laid her head upon the bosom of one of her handmaids, and she became as still as a stone. She afterwards rose up and went about making inquiries till she came to Hebron, which we're about to read, that they find her body in Hebron. So it's showing that, not Hebron. Excuse me. Let me just finish reading here. And she inquired of all those whom she met walking in the road, and no one could tell her what had happened to her son. And she came with her handmaid servants and men servants to Kara Rabbah, which is in Hebron, and she asked concerning her son. And she remained there while she sent some of her servants to seek where Abraham had gone with Isaac. They went to seek him in the house of Shem and Eber, and they could not find him. And they sought throughout the land, and he was not there. And behold, Satan came to Sarah in the shape of an old man, and he came and stood before her. And he said unto her, I spoke falsely unto thee, for Abraham did not kill his son, and he is not dead. When she heard the words of and when she heard the word, her joy was so exceedingly violent on account of her son that her soul went out through joy, and she died and was gathered to her people. I mean, I don't know if the judgment, if she was, could have, I guess, a heart attack. I don't know what exactly the medical description would this be, but I don't know if the judgment for her time of her death was the fact that she was allowing Satan to just deceive her and manipulate her willfully through the fact of the fear of her son being passed. But it is what it is. Verse 87 now. And when Abraham had finished his service, he returned with his son Isaac to his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and they came home. And Abraham sought for Sarah and could not find her. And he made inquiries concerning her, and they said unto him, she went as far as Hebron to seek you both where you had gone, for thus she was informed. So this is, in other words, we're going to read that he found Sarah in Hebron, but they were in Beersheba. So this connects the dots of how and why Sarah went to Hebron, and why she wasn't at home. Verse 89, and Abraham and Isaac went to her to Hebron, And when they found that she was dead, they lifted up their voices and wept bitterly over her. And Isaac fell upon his mother's face and wept over her. And he said, "O my mother, how hast thou left me, and where hast thou gone? Oh, how hast thou left me?" And Abraham and Isaac wept greatly, and all their servants wept with them on account of Sarah, and they mourned over her a great and heavy mourning. And that is how Sarah passed, to summarize the first two verses of chapter 23. All right, verse 3 now.
Then Abraham got up from beside his dead wife, and said to the Hittites, I am a foreigner and an outsider among you. Give me a burial site among you, so that I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Listen to us, sir. You are God's chosen one among us. Bury your dead in the finest of our tombs. None of us will withhold his tomb for burying your dead. Then Abraham rose and bowed down before the people of the land, the Hittites. If you are willing for me to bury my dead, he said to them, listen to me, and approach Ephron son of Zohar on my behalf, to sell me the cave of Machpelah that belongs to him. It is at the end of his field. Let him sell it to me in your presence for full price, so that I may have a burial site. Now Ephron was sitting among the sons of Heth. So in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of his city, Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham, No, my lord, listen to me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. Again Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and said to Ephron in their presence, If you will please listen to me, I will pay you the price of the field. Accept it from me, so that I may bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, Listen to me, my lord. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms, and weighed out for him the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the standard of the merchants. So Ephron's field at Machpelah near Mamre, the cave that was in it, and all the trees within the boundaries of the field were deeded over to Abraham's possession in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of his city. After this, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave of the field at Machpelah near Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So the field and its cave were deeded by the Hittites to Abraham as a burial site.
All right, the rest of the chapter is the burial site for Sarah and his future descendants. Let's go to the book of Jasher now. We're going to be in chapter 24, reading verse 5 through 17. And Ephron dwelt among the children of Heth, and they went and called for him, and he came before Abraham. And Ephron said unto Abraham, Behold, all that thou requirest thy servant will do. And Abraham said, No, but I will buy the cave and the field which thou hast for a value, in order that it may be for a possession of a burial place forever. And Ephron answered and said, Behold, the field and the cave are before thee. Give whatever thou desirest. And Abraham said, Only at full value will I buy it from thy hand, and from the hands of those that go in at the gate of thy city, and from the hand of thy seed forever. And Ephron and all his brethren heard this, and Abraham weighed to Ephron 400 shekels of silver in the hands of Ephron and in the hands of all his brethren. And Abraham wrote this transaction, and he wrote it and testified it with 4 witnesses. And these are the names of the witnesses. And it gives 4 names of the witnesses. And before we continue on that note, Abraham knew the importance of witnesses in confirming a matter. We see this as a command in Deuteronomy 17:6. At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall he that is worthy of death or anything to be confirmed. And in Matthew 18:16. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee 1 or 2 more, that at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. We just see this is how you act righteously when you're performing lively duties. In this transaction, you perform righteously by having by weighing out the balances of what you are buying. Abraham made sure to pay full value because he wanted full ownership forever in his descendants. Then he establishes witnesses, and then he does proper documentation. This is right. This is righteous actions in the sense of two men living life in this world. All right, now back to Joshua 24, continuing verse 9. And Abraham took the book of the purchase and placed it in his treasures. And these are the words that Abraham wrote in the book, namely, that the cave in the field Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite, and from his seed, and from those that go out of his city, and from their seed forever, are to be a purchase to Abraham and to his seed, and to those that go forth from his loins, for a possession of a burial place forever. And he put a signet to it and testified it with witnesses. In the field, in the cave that was in it, and all that place were made sure unto Abraham and unto his seed after him, from the children of Heth. Behold, it is before Mamre in Hebron, which is in the land of Canaan. And after this, Abraham buried his wife Sarah there. And that place and all its boundaries became to Abraham and unto his seed for a possession of a burial place. And Abraham buried Sarah with pomp, as observed as the interment of kings, and she was buried in very fine and beautiful garments. And at her bier was Shem, his sons Eber and Abimelech, together with Anar, Ashcol, Mamre, and all the grandees of the land followed her bier. And the days of Sarah were 127 years, and she died. And Abraham made a great and heavy mourning, and he performed the rites of mourning for 7 days. And all the inhabitants of the land comforted Abraham and Isaac, his son, on account of Sarah. And when the days of mourning passed by, Abraham sent away his son Isaac, and he went to the house of Shem and Eber to learn the ways of the Adon and his instructions. And Abraham remained there 3 years. And that will be the closing story with this Torah portion, Sarah's passing. Next week, we'll be getting into the marriage of Isaac and Rebekah, and the story moves forward. Shabbat Shalom. Thank y'all for joining me on this Torah portion, week 7, chapter 24, book of Genesis. Will be starting week 8. Once again, Shabbat Shalom and Haya Speed, Yasharallah.